Brian Deerwalker. I'm with Bloomington HRA. We hold these seminars June, July, and August of every year. And one we have tonight, I'll introduce Brad here in a moment, it's about lawn maintenance. But before I introduce him, I'd like to just mention a couple things. If you look at the board up here, bloomingtonmn.gov is our website, or the city's website. And if you do the search under seminars, you can find out more information about the seminars. And then also about our housing rehab loan program. If you search that, there's some brochures up here. That's a creative way to finance home repairs if you want through the HRA. So if you want more information about that, go to that site. Finally, let's introduce Brad. Brad Phillips is with Home Depot. If you ever go to Lawn and Garden, you're going to see him there, always helping somebody, very knowledgeable. He's done a couple of these before. We like to bring him back because he's really good at what he does. And ask him questions. And we'll wrap this up in about an hour. If you have questions afterward, you can hang after a little bit too. Sure. And I can, if you have any questions about the loan program or other seminars. So, Brad.
All right, well, I'd like to thank you for coming today. To give you a little bit about my background, I have a 2-year degree in landscape design. I've worked at nurseries for 9 years, so I've seen it all. And then I've been at Home Depot for 21 years. So I've got a vast amount of knowledge, and there's probably not a question I haven't been asked. So feel free to ask questions along the way to make sure that you understand what I'm talking about, because I want to make sure you're getting the information you need to get out of this class, okay? What I'm going to start out with is I'm going to start out with fertilizing your lawn, the 4-step program, or 5 if you call the winterizing. And then I'm going to go into some seeding. What grass seed to buy, lots of brands out there. What do you look for? And then maybe go into some insecticides and things like that that might be damaging your lawn right now, Japanese beetles, things like that that could be causing a problem. So I'll get started with the fertilizers. And first step in the spring, you want to get started with probably a starter fertilizer or a pre-emergent. I have 2 starters here. One's a starter pre-emergent, and one's just a straight starter fertilizer. If you're a person that doesn't like to use chemicals, stick with the straight fertilizer that just has nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. I'll give you a little background about fertilizer. Is going to be, there's 3 things in every fertilizer. I don't care if you're using it for lawns, your plants, your trees. Look for the 3 numbers on the bottom of the bag or on the side or something. And it's going to be NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. With those 3 numbers, it does the same for all plants. Nitrogen is for top growth. Phosphorus is for root growth and flowers, and potassium is for disease resistances. So if you remember the phrase up, down, all around, you can kind of answer it as you go and then kind of tweak that number for what you're doing, whether it's lawns, plants, trees, shrubs, whatever, okay? Once you get started with the starter fertilizer, you got to ask your question, are you going to be seeding in the spring or not? And if you don't remember it, you can always ask the associate on the floor or anything. If you are going to do grass seed, I recommend a pre-emergent that says starter on it. This will be has a chemical in there that stops all seeds from germinating, but the starter part of it, this will allow grass seed to germinate. This one will not. So do not get those mixed up. This one's going to be cheaper, running around $18 to $21 for 5,000 square foot. This one's running $35, $36 for 5,000 square foot. So there's an expense there. But you can stop your weeds from germinating and just take care of the ones you see. All right? If you see, I like to do mine all at once. So I like to do a pre-emergent in the beginning, and then I like to use a liquid weeding product, a broadleaf weed killer, to spot spray the weeds that I do see. And by doing that in combination, I'm stopping all my weeds and my lawn looks good all season long. You can choose to pluck out the dandelions with something like a dandelion weed puller. There's various ones out on the market right now. You basically just take the tool, center it over the bottom of the plant or top of the plant, push down, and then pop it out and move on. There's no stooping over, don't have to break your back, and you're not using chemicals, so that's always a good thing. So I'd recommend one of these. At first I thought maybe it was a little bit expensive for a tool like that when I can just take spray and spray it, but actually it's not so bad. It's pretty fun. Those run about $26 on average. I don't care what brand you're really getting, it's gonna be about that, but it's a tool you can hang up there and give it to your kids, let them do it, you know? So it's kind of fun. And what I do is I kind of go out there daily or weekly and look for the yellow dandelions and pluck them out as I see them. Okay, yes?
We have a lawn care service that comes in, starts that plan, so will they do all the things that you're talking about in the process?
The question was, he has a landscape company that's coming out and doing the 5-step program, possibly. You have to specify what to use, whether it's going to be granular or liquid. And I recommend granular. Liquid is going to be what I call an IV for a plant. It's instantaneous, you see results within a week, but there's no longevity there. Where granular fertilizers like these here are a 6 to 8 week release system, time released, so that it feeds the plant gradually as we go. Now, if it's been really wet and rainy that season or whatever, I would maybe do it in 6 weeks. And if we've had kind of a drought and you don't have a sprinkler system, wait 8 weeks, because there's still food left in that little grain that's slowly releasing the nutrients.
The liquid doesn't have a time release?
Liquid does not, no. There is another problem with liquid that I feel is a problem, is the company comes out and does your yard and drags that hose, and he goes out and does your neighbor's yard and drags the hose. If any one of you have a disease on that hose, he's dragging it through everybody. They don't sterilize that hose. So I'm kind of leery on using liquid. That's my opinion. There's other people out there that will have a different philosophy on it, but that's kind of how I feel. And I always think that granular is just a slow release. You're using it as the plant can suck it up, and it's really good. And because Bloomington is sandy on the average, there's some clay areas, we have a lot of leaching of the nutrients down through the soil, and nitrogen is one thing that moves. We are a zero phosphorus state, so the only way you can get phosphorus in your fertilizer when it comes to lawn is a starter fertilizer. You'll see the middle number is going to have a little bit higher number. And remember, phosphorus builds a root system. You have a strong root system, you're going to have a healthy top. There's just no way about it, all right? On a side note, I would also recommend how you mow is critical too. Mowing your lawn longer, like 3 inches or better, your root system will mimic that below. You scalp it at 1 to 2 inches, you get a root system that's very shallow. So when it comes to July, like right now, you can see balding spots and things like that. So you'll have dry areas and your lawn will look brown faster. Keep it longer, shaded, your lawn will do better throughout the whole season. Okay? Any questions on that? Yes?
How about if you have moles? Because then they say you should be cutting your grass real short and not keeping it long.
I disagree with that. Healthy lawns are all, the question was, what if you have moles? And I say, let's deal with the problem. You have a mole problem. I also know there's an underlying problem there because they're after a food source. They're after grubs or earthworms. You take care of those, your moles will go away. It's a desert in your yard then. They will go to the neighbors or go down into the ravine where they came from, but you want to control those right away. And I recommend doing it in the spring. So, and you could do a spring application, a fall application, and if you think it's bad enough, you can do a summer application like right now. Sure, because you might be controlling your insects.
All neighbors have moles as well. That's how I got it.
Right. Everybody else has got them, and they are not controlling the insects.
Nobody is.
And so you're controlling them, but they come back because they fly around, lay the eggs, they turn into a larva, they eat away at your lawn, and July you see the problem. You see blotchy spots that are brown, and you're like, what did I do wrong? I'm fertilizing, I'm watering. Well, the grubs were eating all spring, just chopping that root off real shallow, and now we have a drought or a hot spell. and there's no water reserve for that plant. So it dies. It doesn't go dormant, it dies. So you're gonna have to replace or strengthen, reseed your lawn.
Constantly.
It can be, but if you're doing the insecticide,
I'm gonna do this for 10 years.
I have gotten to the point where I am just gonna buckle down and just do an insecticide every spring, assess it through the season, if I need to do another one, and know that my lawn will be okay.
You don't seed or anything extra then?
I do a little bit here and there. There's always along the driveway where there's salt burn, or along the road, things you can't control. You always get some of that. And that's also where crabgrass comes into play. You're seeing it now, and it's growing with a vengeance. It's usually on the edges. So those spots, if you seed it and keep it long, crabgrass can't take hold. That's another thing. They want open spots to germinate. And crabgrass is an annual. As soon as it freezes, that crabgrass is dead, but the seed survives like forever. And you really have to control that. That's why the pre-emergent in the spring is going to solve that problem for you by doing. Just remember, if you're seeding or think you're going to seed that season, that means within 6 months, to make sure you get good germination, you have to use this starter pre-emergent. You cannot use this one, okay? If it does its job, it's going to stop that grass seed from germinating, okay?
You recommend overseeding every year then?
I think everybody needs to do a little bit. What seed you buy might vary, and I can go into that later on that. But yeah, I do a little bit of spring seeding, but I buy small bags and throw it out there, lightly rake, get it watered in, take a hold, because in the spring it's usually typically more wet, and things tend to germinate and I don't have to water as much, and I love Mother Nature helping me out. You know, I don't like to set up that sprinkler. That's why in the spring and fall, those are the 2 seasons I recommend planting grass seed, for the fact that it's cool, either in the morning or at night, you know, around 65 degrees, the ground temperature has to be. And so that's kind of why I like recommending those seasons. You don't want to be planting grass seed now. It's too hot and you're not going to get the germination that you want, okay?
Is this thing for sodding as well?
Sod's different. Sod's already there. Water, water, water. That's the answer.
You can plant sod anytime.
So you can plant sod anytime it looks good. People call in the spring and say, is your sod in? Or can you plant it? Well, if your yard doesn't look good, they can't harvest it because theirs isn't looking good. And they're usually more up north and it's thawing out. And it just doesn't come up where they can sell it and cut it. So they harvest it direct and then ship it in immediately. Yes?
If you're planting seed in the fall, then aren't those moles going to eat that all winter?
No, the larvae eat in the spring. They get plump and fat, and then they turn into that beetle or moth. And then they, as an adult, fly around, lay more eggs in your neighbor's yard, your yard, everybody's yard. And then the egg hatches late summer and September-ish, and then they start to become real little. And they stay little, but they're eating a little bit. And then what happens is, that's why I say you might need to do a fall insecticide late on, because you want to kill those little ones before they come back up.
And what do you consider fall? Is that
September.
September.
September, rule of thumb, depending on how the year's going, you know, that can vary a little bit, but September is really good.
Take care of the little ones then, and
Yep.
after that I can see.
Oh, you could seed anyway, anytime. As long as spring or fall, you can seed, no problem at all. The insects start cutting at the roots, the seed will germinate and it'll grow. You just want to stop it from eating the adult grass, okay? So you have to really be watching that a little bit more. And that's why you're going to get more benefit. You certainly want to do the insecticide then in the spring with a grub killer. I do like the granular. This is a very advanced formula. Because you have grubs, but you have moles. Anybody who's recommending, this is a total kill product. It does kill earthworms, but I got to kill all the food source. And this one does work. There are cheaper chemicals out there, whether they're liquid or granular, that kill grubs, but they don't do a total kill. And because you have a problem with moles, I need to recommend this. It's a little more expensive, about 18, 20 bucks.
Good brand.
It's a good brand, yeah. There are other competing brands, but it's a good brand. It's reliable. It's my go-to. Triazicide is another one. I brought the liquid version so you could just see what it looks like. It's a hook it up to the garden hose, flick it on, water it in, and it's a chemical that goes in, stays at the surface. It replaces diazon. I don't know if you guys remember diazon, because you have to have a commercial license now in order to apply it. They still have it, but this is a substitute for residential. So it's a great product, yeah.
Both of those, or either of those products, or any products, pet friendly.
Well, it's a chemical. So use common sense. Don't use a liquid and send your dog out on the lawn, let it dry out, wait a day if you're worried about it. After it's dry, they typically go into the soil and it's safe after that. But always, always, no matter what chemical you use, read the back of the bottle, read the disclaimers, okay?
Water it in?
Well, this one is watered. This is water activated right away. Those granulars, it doesn't start working until Mother Nature waters it or you do, okay?
Can I put that on now, that bag?
Yes.
I can put that on now.
You're going to get some benefit out of it. Will you get as much? No, but you need to control it.
Spraying, but put it on now and then I still can put it on.
Yes, and the reason why I'm saying put it on now and then you might need to do another treatment later on is I need to kill all the food source, get those moles out of there because they're causing damage right now. And they're still causing damage.
And is it right now, July, end of July and the 1st of August, when moles are ready to...
They're breeding and...
The grass, right?
Yeah, they're burrowing.
Yeah.
So it doesn't hurt, it doesn't kill them. You're just creating no food source for them. You're removing the interest of why they're in there in the first place. Okay? And you've got a unique situation. It's going to be a never-ending battle a little bit, but at least knowing the answer of how you can solve it will keep your yard looking good so you don't have to repair it. Yes, it is. And I think, too, you can probably do it. If you do it now and then do it in the spring, you're probably going to get everything covered. You can certainly do it in the fall again if you needed. But, I'm not a big fan of always doing chemical. I like to do it as natural as possible, if you can.
What's the brand on the triazicide?
The triazicide, this is Spectracide, makes it. Triazicide. It comes both in liquid and granular. So if you do the granular, these are spreaders that are great for any of the bags of fertilizer. Just make sure when you're fertilizing or applying chemicals. I like a broadcast spreader versus a drop spreader. Drop spreaders drop it straight down, and you have to be so precise. If you make a mistake, I'm going to know it. So, especially with fertilizer, because you're going to see the stripes and you're like, what's going on? It's either going to be bright green, yellow, or brown. And you're going to see that because they weren't as precise on the thing. When you use a broadcast spreader, it spreads both directions and you overlap. So I like to space my wheels evenly in the lawn, not over the top of one wheel. I go one wheel and then another one. I space it out. So that, and I do it just like you mow your lawn, okay? Twice around the outside edge and then back and forth in between, and you've done an even coverage. And these are very, very simple. You just, on the back of every bag, whether it's a chemical or a fertilizer, it tells you the number to use. They use Scott's spreaders as a go-to number, and it's just what the spacing is and how much you're releasing when you do it. Dial it, and then squeeze the handle. It opens the little gap in the inside there, whatever that is, and spread it. Now, they've started adding this little guard on the side, and it's an, I don't know if you guys can see it, but it's the orange guard along here in the front. And what that's for is, depending on what you're doing, you don't want to put chemicals in there and then go up to your flower garden and start spreading it on the flower garden. So it guards it, so it does like an angle. So you put the guard on the side of the garden that you're doing and protecting it, and then you do everything else. That's why you do twice around the outside, so you don't have to spill it on your driveway, put it in the roadways. You're not wasting it, okay? You have more control. And then when you're doing the broadcast in between, open up the guard and go both directions so it's nice and even. Yes?
When you talk about going twice around the outside, are you talking about overlapping, or do you go?
No, I mean, I do, if whatever the pattern is of your yard, I like mowing. I always do the outside edge and blow it to the inside if you're not mulching. That gives me a nice wide base so that when I go back and forth, I'm not spilling it over where I don't want it. I have more control of the chemical. So I'm just doing a perimeter first. okay? It's like end rows when you're farming, you know? You can turn around and do whatever. Yeah, you might get a little bit more fertilizer on that spot or a little more chemical, but because it's a broadcast spreader, it doesn't matter. You're not gonna notice it. It'll all work out in the end, okay? Going to the next step, so we have, I want to get back to the fertilizing. We have the starter or the pre-emergent, that's step 1. 6 to 8 weeks, we go to the second step, which would be the yellow bag. And that could be right now. This is considered summer feeding. It's called the weed and feed. Everybody sees the weed and feed and they say, yep, that's what I want. So I see a lot of people grabbing that yellow bag instead of grabbing the blue bag in the spring, because they say, oh, I want a weed and feed. No. This is a pre-emergent. This is a post-emergent, the yellow bag is. No matter what brand you have, they all have them color-coded, and they typically all do the same color scheme for the most part. But the weed and feed has to stick to the foliage when you apply it. So if you do have weeds, so you want to do it early in the morning with a heavy dew, or turn on the sprinkler system and then apply it. Because it sticks to the foliage, it's activated, and it's internally taken into the plant, and it kills it, okay? Where all the others are water activated, it doesn't even do anything until you get rain on it. But this one, it cannot rain for 24 hours, I like to say, a whole day, okay? So turn off your sprinklers, make sure it's not gonna rain. You need to make sure that it really gets in there and activates well. You'll have better control. Caution on any perennial gardens. The chemical there doesn't know the difference between what you want to keep and what you don't. So do not put it on there. You'll not like the results at all. And I found there's certain perennials out there, salvias, that even if you get even a little bit close, that thing starts turning yellow and it just shrinks. It's like it's allergic to it or something. I don't know. It just really is sensitive to it. So I learned that the hard way. Myself. Step 3, oh wait, I said this is actually step 3, this is step 2. This is an insecticide. Now, should you have ants and things like that, insects above the ground, not in the thatch layer underground, this is the one you to apply. It's not used a lot. We have it because some people want to control ants, but if you're controlling your grubs, like I told you about with the triazicide, or you're putting down the Bayer product, it's going to cover the ants also. So you're not going to need to use step 3, or right there, okay? So the orange bag probably is not needed. Because you're not using it, you want to fertilize every 6 to 8 weeks. So you substitute it with a straight fertilizer. It's always the green bag. It has no chemical in it whatsoever. It's just a nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So this bag here can be substituted for step 2, 3, and 4. All right? It's based on what you need, and it's going to save you some money too, because you're already spending some of the money on the other things that we know we have problems. I gave you solutions to solving a lot of the things you would see right away in the spring. So this is a great substitute. Now, most people on average only fertilize twice a season maybe. They do the spring and then they do the fall. But if you are one that wants to keep your lawn looking good, do 4, 5, even 6, depending on how early our season works or starts up. You can do that many. People with sprinkler systems can do more, okay? Or if it's been a wet, rainy year. Some new products on the market that I'm seeing everywhere are going to be, if you see the Turf Builder Triple Action or the All-in-One Weed and Feed by Bayer. They're both about the same. They're just competing with what they're doing. This is for the person who doesn't really know what to do, and they just want to do everything just in one bag. This is a pre-emergent and a post-emergent, all in one bag with a fertilizer. Something brand new. So even if you don't have the education or are not asking questions, you can put this down and solve a lot of your problems. Now remember how I said that the post-emergent, this yellow bag, has to be wet first before you apply it? Same goes for this. So if it's going to be in the summer, it has to be wet before you apply it so that it sticks to the foliage. You have to remember that, okay? But both are great. It does the spring application and it does a summer application all in one, and it is a little more expensive, but it covers everything. So Any questions on that?
Is there a particular website that you can go to just to kind of educate yourself on some of these things?
You can Google certain things, but they really don't have. YouTube has a lot of what I'm telling you on it too. It's gotten really good, but there's not. Huh?
What is it called?
YouTube.
Oh, YouTube.
Just YouTubing it,
Yeah.
and then your question on whatever it is, whatever season, you can go on over it. There's a lot of videos. You'd be surprised. You can learn almost anything on there. So it's really good information. And then the fourth step, or the fifth step, I should say, is going to be the winterizer. I don't happen to have a bag of winterizer. Winterizer has changed, at least in our market right now. It used to have phosphorus in it, or a small amount. But when you start looking at the numbers, they don't have phosphorus in there. And if you look at the nitrogen, potassium, it's the same as what just a straight fertilizer is. I can't visually see anything different. They're calling it a winterizer, but basically all I think they're doing is just putting a different colored bag around it. Personally, I don't know. I've looked at it. I'm open to talking or discussing it, but that's what I feel.
How about the companies? Do they have it in it? The companies have stronger products like ProTurf?
No, there's a lot there. It doesn't really matter. It's how they make the fertilizer, how fast it releases. But most lawn fertilizers, on average, are pretty compatible when it goes from one brand to the next. I'm one that I buy it on sale, and I store it in my shed.
Do you buy anything on sale or just stuff?
I do. I don't care whether
You're
it's...
right there.
I'm right there. I see it. I don't care if it's Scott's Fertilizer or Lesco or Vigoro or some other brand. It doesn't really matter. I just have to remember how is it applied and how fast does it release. Those are the questions I'm asking. Fertilizer doesn't really get old, especially the granular, as long as you keep it dry. So I've had some in there for 5-6 years myself. So I buy one, smart is what I do, and then apply it. Now, some of the chemicals, if you're buying some of the pre-emergents and things like that, the chemicals may not be as active, so you might lose some control there, but the fertilizer's fine. Okay? So it's something you can shop smart, buy on sale. It's really good. And one other thing with a lawn, I like to bring up ironite. Ironite is a product that iron is in some of the more commercial grade fertilizers. It's really good. But if you want that deep, dark green lawn that you see, you put a bag of this on. It can be a little spendy for the square footage, but if you want to show off and do something different that your neighbor's not doing, ironite's the product you want to use, okay? It's really great.
Really? That's interesting. We've only got one yard on the block that looks like that.
He's probably using it, or you can get it, I think I've seen it in liquid too, but granular is easy to apply if you have a spreader. It's a one-time purchase for the spreader, and you can use it for all these products. It's super, it's great.
What time of the year are you putting that ironite on?
Whenever you're fertilizing or when you see you need a need for it. If it looks a little peaked and you say, oh, I want it a little greener, put some iron on it. You know, you assess everything based on what you're seeing at the time you're doing it. And that's what I'm saying. Be smart about it, ask those questions, and assess what you need. And if you can't remember some of these things, ask the people on the floor I'm just trying to give you the questions to ask so you can get the right information. You don't have to remember everything. You just don't want to do the right thing. So ask those questions. That's why I said about the pre-emergent there. You're planting grass seed, you better be buying the right one, okay? So, and next I'll kind of go, I've got some granular fungicides and we've got liquid fertilizer fungicides that come into a bottle like this. I didn't bring a bottle, it's Immunix, but bottle looks basically the same. Granular is easy to apply. It's usually used in the spring after the frost comes out of the ground, the snow's gone. Fungicides may be needed based on what you see, circular patterns, blotchiness that you didn't have the year before. You've probably got fungus. Put this down, stop it from spreading so that you have control, and then you can start planting grass seed where it's needed. The rest of the grass won't get infected, and you can have a healthy lawn from there, okay?
I thought the brown patches were the grubs.
Depends. It can be both. You have to assess it. That's why I'm kind of vague on how I say it, but circles, even circles, and it's really weird. Blotchiness could be typically from grubs. That's my go-to, but sometimes some of those molds can look the same too. You kind of got to assess, all right?
Can you dig up the soil to find the grubs?
Yes, you should see them in there.
Go down that.
Once the ground thaws out and they've moved up and are eating away, you should see them. You should see them in your garden. If you're digging in your garden and moving flower beds around and you're seeing them, you've got them in your yard because they'd rather be in your...
I got you on that bake?
Yeah, they're right here. It's this big white plump thing. They can get about an inch, inch and a half, depending on how healthy and how good they like. They like the healthy lawns that you are trying to... They don't want the dry desert ones. They want the healthy lawns.
I didn't get those till after I got the automatic watering.
And they love those. Healthy lawn is a good tasting lawn, so you're going to have lots of them. So that's why you have to watch it a little bit more. All right? And this, like I said, this is a total kill, so it does ants and things like that. Those can cause problems in your house. See, I like to use something like that. You know, I don't want ants in my house. I don't want carpenter ants either. This doesn't do carpenter ants. That's a different chemical. But you can ask, and there's other products that they sell for that. That's the only ant that has to have a specific chemical.
I got a weird question for you. What can you put on your pole that you're hanging your hummingbird feeders on that will not let the ants keep coming up there and getting in the feeders, because the hummingbirds don't like it, but I don't want to put anything in there that would poison them because they're just so little, you know.
It's hard because they do sell little deflectors and things like that, and I don't find that they work that good. It's something you just got to kind of control. Maybe control them around the area, do an ant spray around the area so they don't come to it. It's less likely they're going to get in, but more move in. So I think that's how I would solve it, because those other methods aren't as good.
See, I first put these little ant things that you put in the lawn, you know, that the ants take back to their little nests.
The baits.
But then I got 10 times more ants.
Well,
What happened there?
I like doing, in the house it's fine for the bait stations, but a blanket kill for ants in your lawn would be much better, I think. More economical. You can use the triazicide, like I said. This is going to be a blanket application. This is only $6 a bottle, and it covers 5,000 square foot. Cheap, inexpensive way of solving the problem. Yeah, more move in, but then you can assess it the next month and see what happens and go from there and spray it again. You're going to probably have this on the shelf. All you do is hook your garden hose onto it, spray it, back walk. Don't walk over what you spray, okay? Got to keep common sense in it. And then
Right now, I'm just spraying it with Dawn's dish soap because that was okay for the little ducks when they got in all that mud.
well, and it can, the soap can kill some insects. Doesn't
They all go away for about 24 hours
Yeah.
and then they're all back.
Another product for ants, I don't know if you even know, but powdered 7, especially now. People have hornets, wasps, bees underneath, behind things. I'm going to throw this out there. I know it's not about lawns, but it's a good solve problem. When you got hornets and things behind your siding or somewhere where you can't get at them, you can't see the nest, under this powdered 7 solves ant problems, the little ant mound you see in your sidewalk, your pavers, whatever. Sprinkle it down, 5 minutes, they're gone. They're not coming back. This stuff is a great product. This is something you use on your vegetable gardens. If you see worms eating it, you can sprinkle that on the foliage. Yes, it looks like powdered sugar and it looks ugly for a little bit, but
What's the brand?
it's 7.
7 is the brand.
7 is the brand. Comes both in the powdered or liquid, or you can get a bottle that also hooks up like this. If you're doing fruit trees and things like that, you'd want a bottle that's ready to use. So this is a great product. You can use it in your garden. Make sure and wash the fruit after you use it. That's the only stipulation. Yes?
I think I'm kidding, but the thing that you said killed everything, would it kill rabbits?
No. Unfortunately, those are harder to take care of. Squirrels, rabbits, and chipmunks are going to be a whole nother product. There are ways of solving it, but we'll talk after class. Well, no, there's other methods, but I want to get back to 7 for the bees. Have you ever seen those back when I was a kid, Grandpa had this thing where you'd unscrew it and you'd pour the powder in, you'd screw it on and you'd pump it, and it would pump out a stream. Okay, they do make those. You have to find them, go on the internet, put this powder in there, get behind the siding and pump it and get dust everywhere. Those bees and everything that you had, those hornets, are going to be gone. You get it on a couple of them, they go in the nest and they rub it off on everybody else and the whole nest is annihilated. So it's a great way of controlling that, because hornets are not fun. They can keep stinging and they hurt. So I've had to personally use this. But this solves some problems, and know that it's something that I always have sitting on my shelf, just sitting there, ready to go. It's a quick, I see an ant mound in my yard and I don't want to spray everything, I just sprinkle a little and go walk away. It's done, gone.
They just go somewhere else.
No, that nest is gone. The ants get it on them, they take it down in, they're done. They're not going anywhere else, they're gone. So, quick, easy way. Product that no one knows. This is off, it's for mosquitoes, you find it in the bay. There's Cutter too, but Cutter doesn't work like this one. This is covers 16,000 square foot. You know those Japanese beetles that are hitting everywhere? And you're buying sprays and you're doing all this other stuff, but you didn't control it or the neighbors didn't. And everybody's hanging the bags and drawing them in, because this draws for about a half mile. So you're drawing people say, oh yeah, but I'm drawing all the neighbors in. Yeah, you kind of are, but every one you control is one you got. So the bag is a nice method, but it's got a bait sense, it's got a scent disc in there that draws them in, and then they get caught in the bag, which has water in it, and then they die and drown. Now I've heard of some people putting a 5-gallon pail in, cutting out the bottom, and they get a whole half a pail full. So it's a way of not always buying a new bag, but that starts to stink after a while.
So how is that different than Cutters?
This one, I found this out by mistake and then reading the back of the bottle and the ingredients. I had been using this for years. I'm spraying for the mosquitoes in my backyard. I don't like them in my fire pit. I want to control it. I spray my grass, my trees, all my flower gardens, everything. I don't spray my vegetables or my herb garden or anything like that. I'm controlling it because I have to read into it, and I just want to be cautionary on that. But anything you spray this on, Japanese beetles will not eat it. You won't see them. 2 or 3 years ago, when everybody was having, there was an epidemic of Japanese beetles. Everybody had them. I have plants that I know they love, roses and potato vines, and once they eat, they're gone. It's like you don't look at it and see it for one day and it's gone. This stops it. You won't ever have a bite taken out of your leaf. So it's a great product. Covers 16,000 square foot, only costs $10.
Do you have to reapply it every time it rains then?
No, it's 8 weeks worth of control.
For the rain?
Yes.
Oh, really?
So spray it, let it dry, and it controls the mosquitoes. In fact, you spray this with it, whatever the mosquitoes are at that moment, it'll take care of 50%, because you got the neighbors coming over too. But you'll notice 50% decrease in the mosquitoes for sure, if not none. It's a great product.
What about the zappers? What's the word on those?
Yeah, they work constantly. They draw them over. So you want to put them in the backyard away from where your area is, but they draw. But this is going to control it way better. Instant, I just spray it once every 8 weeks, and if I notice that it's getting a little worse, okay, go out and pull it out and spray it again. It covers 16,000 square foot. That's most everybody's yard, yes.
But you said you don't put it on food.
I don't put it on my vegetable garden or my herb garden, no. I bypass those. But usually those aren't the ones that the Japanese beetles are going after. Yeah, the bag will work. Yes, go ahead. What?
What is it called again?
This? It's just off. This is the bottle. This is...
It's off backyard.
Yeah, it says off backyard. So this is, okay, I'm sorry. It's off backyard, and it's for mosquitoes, but because I found out by accident by reading a bottle that said Japanese beetle, and I read the active ingredient in there, and it's the exact same one that's in this.
Which is what?
I can't even pronounce it, I'm sorry. I was afraid somebody might ask me that. I'm like, I can't produce it. But just read it. This is the bottle. The Cutter doesn't have the same one. So when you buy the gray Cutter bottle that I've seen that competes with this, that one only does 5,000 square foot, costs the same amount, almost. It's like $9. And this does 16,000 square foot. So it's much better buy.
I sprayed with Cutters one day, and 4 days later, I had mosquitoes back. And for hearing.
This has been working
That was
great.
very frustrating.
And I'm not surprised that you're saying that. That's why I kind of like this one. So something you can kind of think about. Let's go into the grass seed. Anybody have, you see all these brands, Vigoro, Pennington, Scott's. What do I buy? What's better? Do I buy brand name? Sure, you're fine if you buy brand name. Are you getting a better seed? Probably not a better seed, but there's something else different in that seed mixed with it that you might get a benefit out of, okay? So, like Vigoro, I'm just using this. This was just straight grass seed. It's less expensive than Scott's or Pennington or some of these other brands out there. It's a good seed. Just read the back of the label and find out what percentage of what seed is in there. I know with grass seed, if it's inexpensive, it better be a flag going, why is it inexpensive? Read the label. You get what you pay for in grass seed. Promise. So is it annual rye, perennial rye in there? Is that what why it's cheaper? It's a higher percentage. It gives you percentages of both Kentucky bluegrass, which is for sun, red fescue, which is for shade, and then rye grasses, which is a fast germinating grass. And that can be either perennial or annual.
So what's a good percentage then?
You want a blend of everything. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, get a disease in there, and kill your whole lawn. So that's why you want a mixture of a couple different kinds of Kentucky bluegrass, couple different kinds of red fescue. And you don't want to be throwing out shade grass and then putting sun, and then now you see a definite line. So that's why I recommend a blend, okay? So it'll all germinate, and then it'll adjust itself based on the light and what conditions you have. So you see an even gradual change. Now there are areas under trees that you know that you're wasting your money on Kentucky bluegrass because it's not going to make it. So then you use a dense shade grass seed mix, okay, for those. I typically will, people who say they have full sun, I will say, this is a sunny mix. It's got more Kentucky bluegrass in it. I typically will tell people to buy the mixture so you don't see a definite line. Everybody has full sun, but then all of a sudden there's a tree or a shed, and you don't want a definite line. So that's why I like recommending the blends, okay? Read the back of the bag, you'll be surprised what you see, all right? Always ask those questions. There's one here that, remember I told you the quick fix? I'm selling my yard, or I'm selling my house, and I have nothing there. I need something now. This germinates within 10 days, nice and green. Frost comes through and wipes it all out, never comes back. It's only $10, but it's annual ryegrass, so it's not the right thing to do. If you read the back of the bag, they don't say it on the front, no. But it's cheaper. And I remember, if the price doesn't, if it's that cheap, you better go, wait, I got to see a flag here. I'm going to start reading, why is it different? Read the back of the bag. It's going to be, you'll be shocked. And if it says annual, probably don't want to get it. All right? Yeah.
So you can't pick just one bag for us, huh?
No, because everybody has different needs. Some are better at watering, some are not. So I don't want to really go into that. I like to deal with the person on an individual basis and ask them more questions before I give them a good answer. I find out what their needs are. Are they going on vacation? Are they always working? Or are they there all the time and they can take care of it? Then I might recommend something different. Going into, that's where I'm going to go into this Pennington and Scott's. These are well-known brands. Nurseries have them. Big boxes have them. Used to be that Scott's had the water technology on it. It's a product that, it's a blue coating that's on every seed, takes up a little room in the bag because it just makes it a little thicker. It helps you with watering because if you forget to water for one day and you come back, at least you have a chance of reviving that grass seed. If you did it with Vigoro, because it doesn't have anything on it, and that grass seed started to germinate, and you dried it out, that grass is dead and it's not reviving, okay? So that's where you get a little bit more benefit out of some of these other grasses from the brand names. So this one has water smart technology. This one is using micronutrients. I heard that they put the Water Tech in it too. This last year, they've changed their mix a little bit. So they're using some of the same stuff that Scott's is using, but they also add a micronutrient to this. And what that micronutrient does is when the grass seed germinates and sprouts a root, it attaches to that root system and it just grows like crazy. And you get 3 times more of a root system than you would with regular grass seed. So it's great because remember what I said, if you have a healthy root system, I know you have a healthy top, okay? So, and going into a summer that's dry, you have a deeper root system, a bigger root system that can hold more water, your lawn won't go through that stress that it could go through at other times, okay? So you get some benefit out of it. It costs sometimes a little bit more. Pennington and them are kind of neck to neck. You talk to different vendors and they'll do their spill, and I kind of just assess it as I go. I'm not brand specific. So, and grass seed does last, if you buy a big bag and you don't use it all, okay, bring it put it in your garage, keep it dry. You can certainly get another year out of it and use it again. After 2 years, you start losing a percentage of germination. So, start using it up. Whatever you can't use in 2 years, I would say, use it, okay? Any questions on that? Yeah.
Kind of a two-step question. The boulevard's always a problem with the salt that you mentioned before. And is there a way to neutralize or to do something to the soil to enhance new growth? We're just now going through a whole process.
Salt damage is salt damage. That can be your perennial garden, that can be your shrubs, and grass is susceptible to it too. Really the only answer is flushing, watering it heavily, flushing out the nutrients and getting that salt diluted enough where grass seed will start to germinate. Salt is just a problem. And in some cases it's going to be a yearly thing and you can't control it. And guess what? That's where crabgrass always grows. So doing the crabgrass preventer allows other things to germinate in there. Mow your lawn higher, shades the area so that you don't get those weeds growing in those spots, because crabgrass doesn't like shade. So if you have tall grass, it's not growing. So it only likes wide open spaces, pockets, things like that. That's where you're seeing it. So it's easy to control. Crabgrass control. This does broadleaf weeds, crabgrass control. Just by spraying it, you can control it. But you're not going to see it until, well, June, July, probably, depending on how hot it is. So.
Man, I'm struggling with that right now. Right along the edge of my driveway and that kind of stuff is where it's starting to redevelop. Mm-hmm. I just had a lawn service come in and they did their weed and feed deal application. And then I've gone over it again with weed be gone, but nothing's happened.
Well, it takes a little bit of time for it to activate. With it now, I did mine a couple days I was doing some Roundup and things like that, which I have up here, but I didn't notice the immediate signs. The drier and the hotter it is, the faster you're going to see this react. Okay, so once it starts turning yellow, it's dead. It's just it doesn't know it yet. So if you see a color change, then you know you got it. But then if let's say you spray the crabgrass and then later on you see, well, I just sprayed it. How come I've got little stuff coming up? Well, that's more seeds that already had started germinating because you didn't use the pre-emergent and it didn't stop it in time. So you just have to get out your bottle, whether it's a squirt it each individual or hook it up to the garden hose and do a blanket application. But I'm not a big one for doing blanket applications. I like to spot spray with something like this so I can save money. Okay, you can do Scott's. There's Roundup has one. Ortho has one. This is using Roundup came out with this last year, I think. Yeah, it was last year. It's this is for broadleaf weeds, clover, creeping Charlie, things like that. They're using salts in this to kind of control that. And it works really well. Creeping Charlie can be a problem now or in the spring. I say, you might ask, when do I control Creeping Charlie? And I say, when you see it. Control it right away. I don't care the season. Now, maybe I might have to make 2 applications, but at least it's not spreading, because once you get it hunkered down in, it's hard, and I don't want to plant grass seed, because it's durable enough, it'll kill your grass. It gets thick enough. So control it right away. Easier to control in the spring, Creeping Charlie is, when it's flowering, because it's spending that extra energy on for a flower and a seed. But control it right away. Ortho also has a ready-to-use bottle like this. Did I bring it? Yes. So these 2 bottles are competing products. I'll show you. Right up here. Don't get it confused with the orange top, okay? It's totally different. This has a different chemical in it, and it controls Creeping Charlie, clover, and violets, all right? Where regular broadleaf killers don't always get the clover, don't always get the Creeping Charlie. Hurts it, but it may not kill it, all right? So ask questions if you can't remember. And then this one is for Creeping Charlie and clover, but it's actually the same product they sell for poison ivy, that brush killer. The label on this little bottle is different than the label on the big bottle. It's the exact same concentrate. They just have it labeled for grass versus for buckthorn and brush. They tell you to use a little bit more of the active ingredient. This one tells you to use less because you'll kill your lawn, okay? So that's why you always read the labels. But how I know this is I'm reading the active ingredient, and I know the percentage of the active ingredient, so I know both the active ingredient, this, and the poison ivy killer is the same. So you'll learn a lot when you start reading those labels. Okay? Questions on that?
What about quackgrass?
Quackgrass, it's a grass, and there's no product that knows the difference between Kentucky bluegrass, red fescue, or rye. So on that though, that being said, this happens to be diluted spray of Roundup, but they have concentrated. And it's a smaller bottle, concentrated. I like to take the concentrated Roundup early in the spring because quackgrass gets a little taller than the regular grass, so it's easily seen. It's a wider blade grass, you know what I mean? And it doesn't look as pleasing to the eye either. That's why you're asking about it. But something I've done and easily controlled is you take your concentrate, put it in a little throwaway cup or whatever, Dixie cup, I don't know, whatever you have. Pour the concentrate in there, put a latex glove on, put some food coloring in it. Dip your fingers in and just wipe the grass that you want to get rid of. 1 dot of that concentrate on that blade of grass will wipe that plant out and go back into the root system. And it won't hurt the rest of the lawn because you're just touching the tops, just a little bit. So if you want to get rid of it and do it in a more controlled fashion, wipe it just a little bit, and then in a week or so, reassess where you missed, re-wipe, and it's all gone. It'll work real well. Quackgrass is really hard to control because you can't just pull it. It has long little roots, and if you diced it up, you'd get each one of those little pieces of root will turn a new plant. So if you don't, you have to kill it back a certain way. And Roundup will only go back so far, but it will control it, and you will get ahead of it.
I've had the same patch in the middle of my front yard, and you see it every once in a while when I don't cut the lawn.
That's all you have to do.
It's higher than the rest, and I've had it for at least 5 years.
Yes. Yeah. And it's an easy way to do it. You're not using a lot of chemical. You're controlling where you're putting it. It's a win-win. So it's a concentrate. Yeah, this is diluted. You're paying for water when you buy this, but it's convenient. So you're paying for convenience. I always have concentrated Roundup or glycosamate, I believe it is. There's an HDX product that you can get 41% glycosamate. It's not patented anymore, so you can buy it a lot cheaper in other brands, okay? So just know that glycosamate is the active ingredient that you're looking for. And you can buy a small bottle, spend way less, and get many gallons. Yes, go ahead.
So are you on American Boulevard? Because we're going to come visit you.
Yes, we are. Yes, we're at the Home Depot in American Boulevard, yes. Yes, I won't be there for, I don't know, I gotta find out about my foot, but there might be a little for another week or two.
Can we have your cell phone number?
I have given it out to customers.
Can we have your home address? We're gonna, and you have to tack up what you're saying tonight,
Well, that's awesome. Okay, now we talked a little bit about the grass seed. We didn't talk about how, what to pick and stuff like that, but we didn't talk about how to germinate it. Now, let's say if you're overseeding, that's fine. It's really hard to rake and not disturb the grasses you already have. But let's say you have a big area that you want to do. I like to use your grass seed pros about grass seed versus sod are that if I have clay soil and I put sod over the top of it, the roots because their sod is grown in a peat environment, it sometimes doesn't want to attach to that hard clay unless it's super wet and easy to penetrate down through. Sand, it doesn't matter. So depending on where you live and what you have, there's pros and cons to that. It's instant, no mud. You don't have to worry about it, but you have to water, okay? Can't do too much. At least once a day, and it could be twice if you get 90-degree temperatures and things like that.
Put the fertilizer down first and
No. You don't want to burn those roots. So you can fertilize over the top of the lawn after it's all set and the seams are staggered so that it doesn't rip up because you don't want to take a lawnmower and peel it back. So depending on your area and what you do. That's a pro about sod. It's more expensive, but it's instant, okay? Seed, let's say I have a big area that I want to seed. I'll throw down the seed. I'll use a handheld spreader. Never use I forgot to bring a handheld spreader today, but you can use this kind of spreader if you'd like, but I like the handheld. Sometimes I just use my hand and light breeze and do it as evenly as I possible can by throwing the seed. But that's all right for seed and things like that because it doesn't need to be measured. And I've never had anybody come back to me and say, oh my God, my lawn's way too thick. So you really can't put too much seed down, but you want to keep it cost effective. So you find a happy medium there, whatever that is. Once you I like to score the soil a little bit first with a steel rake, which is, I'll show you here. Steel tines, scores that soil, gives a pocket for that seed to fall down in. Seed likes to stay at the surface level, but likes to be covered so that you're not spending your money feeding the birds. You're actually getting grass, okay? So I like to score that soil. I throw my seed down, and then depending on how loose that soil is, I may just leave it that way, or you can take something like peat moss. You can buy small bags, but they sell it in bales of a big square bale, which goes a lot farther. Or you can buy lawn soil or potting soil. Maybe you have some old pots that's sitting around and you don't want, the nutrients are already out of it, but it's perfect for throwing on top of some grass seed. You're only talking 1/4 inch to throw it down, but it gives you good sod to soil contact, and it'll allow that grass to germinate well, okay? So it can hold moisture. Peat moss is great because it has spongy material.
Does peat moss have a shelf life?
No. It's always a staple I have in my shed. It's always great to have. All right, it looks like we're right about at that time. I don't know if you guys had more questions. I'll stick around towards the end of if you have individual questions, I can certainly answer those. Yes? Okay, starter is your first step, whether you pre-emergent or not. It could be starter, pre-emergent, one of those two, okay? Depending on what your needs is. Then it's going to be this can flip-flop a little bit sometimes, depending. The yellow, typically it's your weed and feed yellow bag, your summer guard, which isn't sold as much, and then the lawn, the green bag, which is a regular lawn fertilizer. That's your 4-step right there. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that can be let's say, remember, This can always, if I don't need a weed killer, why am I putting it down? If I don't need an insect killer, why am I putting it down? Substitute it for just a straight fertilizer, it's fine. So, okay. And then fifth step is going to be your winterizer. All right, which I already told you I didn't think it's much different than the regular. And sometimes I substitute it for a starter fertilizer in the winter because I want to strengthen my root system a little bit more, so I want to put a phosphorus down. It's all based on what you need. Okay?
What do you recommend, dethatching and aerating? And heavy clay.
I could see it in heavy clay. I can't see it in sand. I have sand, and I'm not a big fan of the thatching. Okay? I don't like to rip up that. I need that organic matter in the ground. I need to hold moisture. So I have a different need than what you might with clay. If you've had clay and you've never done anything and there's thatch layers thick, okay, dethatching or aerating is a good thing. When you do it, I haven't quite bought in the whole scheme on ripping up the roots. I certainly don't want to rip them up before I go into winter and goes to bed. I might do it in the spring, but you're still ripping those roots a little bit and you're doing damage to the lawn. And so you got to assess that. Aerating isn't really doing damage. It's causing, in clay, it's very good. In sand, you're not getting any benefit. You're wasting your time and money because sand is very porous and clay is not. Needs air. That's why coring it out is better. Yeah.
That insecticide, if you have that put on your lawn, that doesn't kill grubs though.
Yes, it does.
Well, I had an insecticide, I have at my service.
Oh, this one. No, it does not. It's a surface. I'm sorry, I misunderstood which one. No, that's a top killer. Any ticks, ants, things like that. More things that are on the top of the surface, not underneath it. Yeah.
What about chinch bugs?
What was that?
Chinch bugs?
Chintz bugs. It'll take care of those.
The insecticide?
Yes, it will.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, I'd like to thank you all for coming. It's been fun. And I'll stay after to answer other questions. All right, thank you.